On this episode, we drop in on the International Cycling History Conference in Baltimore. Then we travel to Frederick, Maryland for a high-wheel bicycle race. Finally, we attend a demonstration of some historical bicycles. Stay tuned.
We're in Baltimore, Maryland at the Maryland Historical Society building. What's going on here at this building this week?
This is the 25th International Cycling History Conference, and it goes for 3 days, starting today, and we go through tomorrow and Saturday.
What sort of things do you talk about at a cycling history conference?
We have 25 different speakers, 25 different papers, and frankly, there's all kinds of subjects that are being addressed. Some about bicycle clubs, some about bicycle design, who made the first bicycle wheel with the wire spokes, who made the first diamond frame for a bicycle. We had one lady just finished a talk about some cycling paths or cycling trips that were described in detail in a Philadelphia newspaper, and in the 1890s. Fascinating about how the roads, what condition the roads were in, what buildings one would encounter, what obstacles were in the road. Notice there was what the quality of the road was, and generally the quality of the road was pretty bad in those days, but just a wealth of information.
So after 25 conferences, there's still more to learn and more to talk about?
You know, the more you get into this, the more there is to learn. It's like anything else that you do in life. If you're not into it, you say, well, how can you spend so much time on that? But the more you get into the detail of the matter, the more facets you see that are interesting and where we have lack of definitive information. Interesting fields for, most of us are amateur historians, but we have a lot of fun doing it.
So the quick Reader's Digest version of the history of the bicycle, how is the modern bicycle come into being?
Okay, it all started with the draisine, which was invented by the Baron von Trace in Germany for the purpose of getting, there's two ideas. One is he was a forester, facilitated his getting around the forest, the property that he was in charge of. The second theory, which has some validity, is that there was a serious drought at the time and horses were scarce, and there was a need for some other type of conveyance for the local chieftain's army. So this was invented for that purpose. But in that case, you kicked on the ground. There were no pedals on the bike yet. You kicked on the ground, but the real invention was the articulated front wheel, because when you ride a bicycle, you're constantly falling either right or left, and what keeps you upright, which we call balancing, is turning the wheel ever so slightly into the fall, which rights you again and keeps you going. From there, we go to the 1860s when we have the velocipede invented, which was more or less the draisine, but with pedals on the front wheel. And from there, in the 1870s, 1890s, you get the high wheel invented. And the high wheel, the advantage of the high wheel is that with one revolution of the pedals, you go as far as the circumference of the wheel. So the bigger the wheel, the further you go with one stroke of the pedals. And if you're strong enough, you can go faster than anyone else because you're going further again with one revolution. So everybody wanted to ride the biggest possible wheel. And the trouble with those bikes is they're dangerous because as you're sitting very much over near the center of gravity, and if you hit anything or there's any obstacle that causes the front wheel to be slowed down abruptly, will cause you to pitch over forward over the handlebars. And because the handlebars are across your lap, you generally end up on your head. It's called a header. And as you can imagine, that's not good. So there was a frantic effort in the 1880s to find a safer bicycle. And what they came up with, there were a lot of intermediate steps. But what they came out was the bicycle we ride today, essentially. It didn't have as many fancy gadgets like a derailleur that could change gears and all that. They were fixed gear machines, but nevertheless, it had two modest-sized wheels with a crank in the center, a chain to drive the wheel going back to the rear wheel, and we had the modern bike born, from which, of course, all the fancy gadgetry we have was invented to make it faster again. Speed is always king. Faster and safer and more pleasurable to ride.
When would have been the golden age of bicycling in the United States?
That's a good question. Probably most of us cyclists, historians, would say it was in the middle 1890s. And the reason was that when these safety bicycles were first perfected, and I didn't mention the pneumatic tire, but the pneumatic tire was very much a part of this development of comfortable safety bicycles. And in the beginning, though, they were quite expensive. Where a working man might make $5 a week, these bikes would cost $150. So while it was very fashionable to ride the bike, it was not affordable by the masses or the general public. And it wasn't until after the 1950s when the bikes became more affordable, and suddenly they're not so fashionable, though, and the wealthier people or the professional people who could have afforded them earlier stopped riding them and began to play tennis and do other things apart from cycling. But more of the common man started riding, and then came the automobile. And if you could afford it, people showed a preference for an automobile, and bicycles by the, say, 1910s became more of considered to be a child's thing. Not that some adults didn't ride them, but it wasn't so popular. So the golden age, we would say, was the middle 1890s, when people of fashion wanted one, and they would dress up and they would ride down the boulevard, showing off, and everybody's oohing and awing over them. And frankly, there are a lot more bicycles ridden today than back then, but that was kind of the highlight of bicycling.
Yeah, from a historical perspective, how would you evaluate bicycling today versus what we've seen over the last, almost 2 centuries now?
The biggest difference are the roads. The roads in the 1890s were basically outside of the center of our larger cities were terrible. And in a rain, they'd be just a quagmire of mud, which you could bear. Well, also you couldn't ride a bike. You had to push your bike around it somehow. So the roads are the main thing. In fact, I rode my high-wheel bike across the United States in 2004 in 60 days. It took me from New Jersey to Oregon. The first man who did this in 1883, 4, and 5, it took him 115 days, and he was about 40 years younger than I. It wasn't that I was stronger, but I had good roads where he had to go basically cross country on his high-wheel bicycle. So that is the biggest difference between then and now. And of course, our bikes are lighter. They have more versatility in terms of gearing. They have, different kind of handlebars depending on what your preference is, and different kind of saddles. I mean, you have more opportunity to design or make up something that suits you as an individual.
What does it take to put on a conference like this?
Well, it takes a lot of effort to get the word out, to create an environment or a program that's interesting to bicycle historians. For instance, we have our talks. I said we have 25 speakers who are, first of all, they have to know the conference is taking place, and then they have to submit an abstract. It has to be accepted, and then some kind of a venue like this where they can present it properly. But we also take them, we'll take this entire group tomorrow to the U.S. Library of Congress, where the librarians there are putting on a special exhibit for us of the materials within the library that pertain to bicycle history, and they're going to give us a talk on how we can access the materials in the library via the internet, so we can basically stay at home and yet have access to all this fabulous quantity of material that's available. Then we'll go to the Smithsonian, and we'll be informed about the bicycle collection that the Smithsonian Institute has. And we have a very special presentation on pedal-powered flying machines. And we'll actually see them, the examples of these machines, going back to the 19th century, going up to the Condor, which broke all kinds of records for human-powered flight in the 1870s, I believe it was. So not only and these conferences take place in different cities around the world. One of the objects of that is that we can see things that are related to bicycle history that are located here, there, and the other place. It increases our understanding of bicycle history and its role in the world, and that's also part of it. So the organizer has to arrange that so that we can all go to these places, see these things, and enjoy.
We're in Frederick, Maryland, talking with Eric Rhodes. What's been going on here this afternoon?
Well, today we just got done finishing and hosting the nation's only high-wheel bicycle race, and it's only one of 4 in the world. And I think I'd say with the weather and everything, we had a great turnout and some great competition today.
What's the name of your race?
The race is called the Clustered Spires High-Wheel Race.
And how did the idea for that originally come about?
2 other participants, Mike Kennedy and Hyde Coulter, who raced today. The 3 of us went over to England in 2010, and we raced over there, and we said, this is an amazing experience. And so we said, why doesn't the United States have something like this? And we figured with the backdrop of the historic downtown where buildings were built in the 1880s, why not have that as the background for bicycles that were built in the 1880s? So that's how it all came about, and we're in its 3rd year, and I'd say it's very successful each year. It gets better and better. So,
what's it take to put on an event like this?
So it was a crazy idea that my wife's name's Jeannie, and she's the organizer, really. So the 2 of us basically chip away at getting this together over the year. So it's a year of labor of love to get to this point today, and I like to think that it was pretty successful. So I think our efforts were rewarded today. So.
Yeah. How's it been progressing from year to year? I mean, what do you learn one year that you couldn't affect next year?
I mean, our first year, we only had straw bales on one corner that we thought was dangerous. And then we had an accident on another corner. So we had to obviously up the safety a little bit. So safety was a concern from our first year. We thought we were taking good precautions. We had 70 volunteers on the course the first year, actually 80. And we got more police after that first year. We got more volunteers. We taped the course off. We put straw bales on all over the corners. And this year, there was an accident the first year, an accident the second year. There were no accidents this year. And to me, that's a huge win. So we're very happy with that. And then also, additionally, the first year we had 22 racers. Last year we had 24 racers, and we stopped at 30 this year. We turned some people down for it because we wanted to cap it at 30 because we weren't sure how crowded the race was going to be. So we wanted to keep it safe. So we might expand it a little bit more next year. So,
what's the reaction of the city been to this event?
It's interesting because our mayor has embraced the event so much. So that's a very good support. And then as we push forward, we're really trying to capitalize on the idea of the city of Frederick being bicycle friendly. Hosting events such as this makes it unique, draws attention to Frederick, and they've been extremely supportive. So it's been a good relationship.
So next year, what are we looking forward to?
Sadly enough, even though we're basking in this moment of finishing, we're already looking forward to August 15th. 2015. So we'll see how we continue to enhance and make it even better and grow it even more. So.
We're in Frederick, Maryland, talking with Brian Caron. What did you just do for the last hour?
Well, I raced a high-wheel bicycle for 41 laps here at Clustered Spires High-Wheel Race. Took the win.
So, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
How long have you been riding a high-wheel bike?
High-wheel bike I've been riding for about 5 years. Riding bicycles all my life.
How tough was it to learn a high wheel? People see them, they get a little intimidated.
The tough part on high wheels is learning on and off and learning how to navigate in some traffic, But once you learn that, it's just riding a bike. It's a little different. Your perspective is higher, but actually being higher like that, it's safer in a lot of cases. People really see you. So once you get over the learning curve, it's just riding a bike.
How long have you been racing the high wheel?
This is my third year. I've run every event that they've done down here so far. So I'm a 3-year veteran, 2-time winner.
What any particular trick to this type of race?
Pacing yourself. It's awesome. It's an hour-long race, so you know how long you have to go. So you just have to gauge how much you got left in you. And last year, when I saw 7 minutes or so to go on that thing, and I felt like I had about 5 in me, I knew I didn't pace it right. This year I felt a lot better. I trained a little more, did a lot more just 1 hour long hard rides. So it was more like I was out for a ride more than out for a race. So I was able to maintain it to the end and keep my pace. So that's the goal.
Are you looking forward to next year?
Of course I am. Look forward to it every year. It's the best. I've been in a lot of different races, but it's the best event because it's kind of a combination of a parade and a race. The crowd response is amazing. You get the cheer building up as you go because you're seeing the same crowd every minute and a half. And it's just awesome. The energy, you feed off that, and they give it back to you, you give it back to them, and the place is just full of energy. It's awesome. So always look forward to coming down here. The whole day is a great day. And to win the race, it's just icing on the cake.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.
It was the largest recorded volcano action in the world. Because of that, there was no summer in 1816. A gentleman named Dreiss over in Mannheim, Germany, with the death of all the horses over there and the famine because of the lack of summer, came up with the idea of attaching 2 wagon wheels with a wood frame. This is what you have here. This is a hobby horse for grazing. Baltimore has the accreditation of the first earliest sighting that we know of at this point of a hobby horse for a grazing coming here. It should be February 1819. As you see here, it was designed by Dennis Johnson, who invented it in 1818 over in London, and then his patented design came over here. It was used in America, copied most famously by Peel. At that period in American history, we had virtually no roads, so very, very limited use. By the end of the summer of 1819, these fell out of use and they disappeared. And bicycles pretty much disappeared at that point until 1865, when Pierre Lallemant came over from France. The velocipede, as you see here with Ken, thank you very much, David. This is a velocipede here. In 1865, Pierre Lallemant came from France and brought over the front wheel of a velocipede, as you see here. In 1866, in New Haven, he rode it across the green of New Haven and took out a patent for it. This is the world's first bicycle patent, was 1866 in New Haven. There was not an immediate popularity for it, so it kind of lay way late until the French developed it in 1867. And ultimately in 1868, the Hamlin brothers, a group of high wire actors and troupers from vaudevillian, decided that they wanted a safer, better entertainment, so they made a velocipede. This was made in Brooklyn by the Calvin Whitty Company in 1868. This is one of the first velocipedes, first bicycles made in America. Unfortunately, the roads have not really improved here in America. By 1869, America had dumped all its money in the railroads. Very, very, very little money was spent on actual roads. So we celebrated the Transcontinental that year for the railroad, but virtually no roads. These fell out of favor very rapidly by the summer of 1869. In 1876, at the centennial, America was 100 years old, and England brought over several bikes from manufacturers over there. During the period from the velocipede, which basically had a heavy wagon wheel with steel tires, they developed steel and wire spoking for suspension wheels. So here you see the wheel has grown in height, the little wheel has shrunk in height, and the bike has gotten a lot lighter. Why is the wheel so high? Well, the bigger the wheel, the faster you go. Boys are boys, so they want the biggest bike, the fastest bike they can possibly get on. As you saw, you mount it by the step on the back, just above the rear wheel. You buy a wheel according to the length of your leg. The longer your legs, the bigger the wheel you can ride. These bikes were developed over in England early 1871, brought over to America in 1876. And we started our own bicycle industry here in America in 1878 with Colonel Pope. As you can see, at that time the ladies only wore dresses, so this is pretty much an all-boys group that rode these bikes. And it was basically an exclusive type club. These were very, very expensive. They were like $125. At the time, you could still buy a Surrey or a small carriage for about $50 or $60. So this was a major investment. But the selling factor for this was, of course, never needed to be fed. So that was their selling thing. They formed the LAW, League of American Wheelmen. They started magazines, started promoting this, and it became quite the thing for young men to start riding bikes around in club use. Here we have Larry coasting. You throw your feet over the handlebars, so if you go down a steep hill, this is a far safer position. But if anything were to happen, if you hit a curve, if you hit a stick, if you hit a rock, you're going to do a header. So the front wheel stops, but the frame continues moving. Your forehead hits the ground with rather violent action. You'll see Larry's riding a tangent spoke bike, as you see like a motorbike, and Ken here is riding a radial spoke bike, where the spokes actually do not cross.
One of the American inventions, the idea of that big wheel in front and it stops and you go up over the handlebars. Well, the good old American invention was to put the little wheel out in front. It will most likely not go up over the handlebars. It can still happen. We have proven it. But in this case, the little wheel out in front with the pedals that go around is the Eagle, built in Stamford, Connecticut, and this one's 1889. The only way to mount this, I should say one of two ways. The way the manufacturer tells you is put the little wheel up in the air, put the seat in your crotch, put the brake on, and you'll slide right up into the saddle. But not too many guys are going to try. Another one with the little wheel out in front, which predated the Eagle. The Eagle, by the way, was built in 1889 to 91, and Carrie is here on an American Star. This is 51 inch, and built in 1887, I think you told me. The Star, as you can see, has levers that go up and down. They do not go completely around the axle as most pedals you would expect. One way to dismount this is pulling a wheelie, hopping a wheelie, pull that little wheel up in the air. Here comes Ken back on the Eagle. I think we'll get him to do the same thing. But here he is up on the Eagle. The Star built in Smith, there we go, popping a wheelie on the Eagle. Thank you. The Star was built in Smithville, New Jersey, next to Mount Holly, New Jersey, if you know New Jersey. There's a Smithville down by the shore, but not this one. That's right. Very nice. I've never seen that done on a Star. Wonderful. Coast with the Star, as you can see, but most other high wheels you cannot. And this one is the American Safety, built by Gormley and Jeffrey in Chicago, Illinois. Gormley and Jeffrey eventually became Rambler bicycles, Rambler automobiles. The design incorporated a lever arm system with the pedal levers extending to a rear position, permitting the saddle to be located further back, consequently giving you a fork brake toward the back and the body then farther back. Consequently, a safer riding position. Your feet are never in front of the pivot point. The wheel sizes were 40 to 48 inches, and this one is a 46. The Ram's Horn modern handlebars he's pointing out here. These are sort of a drop frame racing style bike handlebars as we know today. Oh, there's an adjustment possible on the top of the swinging rods to move them up or down, thereby moving the pedals to adjust for riders of different sizes. While the men were on the high wheel bicycles, the ladies could get out on the roads with them beginning in about 1881 with high wheel tricycles. Now this tricycle is built by Gormley Jeffrey. As I mentioned before, Gormley Jeffrey was Rambler. Now follow this method of thinking here. Gormley Jeffrey became Rambler Automobiles. Rambler was taken over by American Motors. American Motors was taken over by Chrysler. Daimler and Chrysler were in cahoots for a while. This is a precursor to the Mercedes-Benz. You can see that she has steering in the right hand, and that goes to the little wheel on the front. And there is a band brake on the left hand that she can apply by twisting, and that will stop her from going forward anymore. There's a wheelie wheel on the back so that you would not be able to fall backwards and hit your head. Ken is now showing you the next style bicycle. We are now known, the high wheel has been have been very dangerous machines. And so there were people trying to determine how can we get the same gearing ratio and make it a much safer machine. Well, one of them, Carrie is riding one direct pedals to the back wheel. This is called the Bronco, and Bronco was made in Connecticut. And this is geared to what, about 54? 51-inch gear radio. As you can see, it's direct drive to the back wheel. Ken, however, has the chain on his now. This is where the modern bike really started, with two wheels the same height, and chain and sprocket, giving us a gear ratio of about a 54-inch wheel. This one is a Columbia, and you can see some extra suspension. Thank you. Suspension on this. On the front wheel, there are springs off the front axle. This was built in 1891, and he still has a brake on this. It goes to the front of the rear wheel, so it makes it a safer way of stopping, putting that brake on the rear wheel. That was by Columbia, and they made those from about 1887 up to about 1891. Hard tire safety, we call them. Hard tire because they're solid rubber tires, no air in them. Just as on the high wheel bicycle. Solid rubber tires. Still can do that, popping a